Since 2010, we've had the opportunity as members of Regnum Christi to deepen and renew the gift of God that we have received, and thus we're able to begin this path of renewal that the Church requested and that we ourselves needed. This video explains the meeting point, the point of encounter that we've arrived at as a spiritual family. We have experienced difficulties, frustrations, and disagreements, but the desire to find a meeting point where we can all find common ground has remained firm. A meeting point where we can all stand together, a point of encounter where we can successfully coordinate ourselves in order to carry out our charism and common mission, strengthening each vocation and therefore strengthening Regnum Christi. The canonical configuration and the statutes are the fruit of discernment, of listening to the Church, of which we are a part, and through being docile to the Holy Spirit. This meeting point, this point of encounter, this common ground, is made up of 11 aspects which we have matured during this journey and will discuss in this video. The symbol of a fishbowl has been used to represent Regnum Christi, which has been filling itself with God's merciful love in these past years. A Regnum Christi, that with each person's personal commitment, represented as a glass of water, is called to overflow. A Regnum Christi that is called to go out into the world to bring the light of the gospel to the peripheries and reveal Christ's love to people, form them as apostles, and launch them in their God-given mission in life and in the Church to build His kingdom.
I would say this is not a point of an encounter, but a point of departure, I would say. The charism is where we all were born, in Regnum Christi. Therefore, from there is where we began. From there we depart. From there is where we encounter the direction to move forward. Therefore, it's not a difficulty to encounter a point in common. It's the place of birth, I would say, the charism that we have in common. I believe it's been a way of highs and lows, moments where it's been a little bit easier, moments where it's been more difficult. I've been in Regnum Christi for 20 years. When I began, I worked with the consecrated women, and the legionary priests were something that was far off that appeared when we wanted to have confession. I think I've had more contact with the legionary priest in these last 3 years than I've had all of my life. And at the root of this process, we began to work together, and one can see the richness that each branch has to give without losing their identity, and this spirit of Regnum Christi that you can see and that you can touch. I believe there is a point of union in the mission and in the work, and I believe that we can enrich each other working together. We walk together, but together. We have to be together.
Regnum Christi, the members of Regnum Christi, we make ourselves witnesses of this universal call to the apostolate, and witnesses that this call is good news. It is evangelical news. It is joyful news that speaks of the love of God for each person. All Regnum Christi members share this, and each one lives it according to their own vocation, and then as well according to their mission. If we're convinced that there is a charism, well then He has to not only reveal it to us, but has to make us come together towards that charism. And very importantly, respecting the differences that each one brings to the charism. Because the richness of a charism in the Church is that not only one person is responsible for it, and in this case, not only one juridical entity, but all the juridical entities, and within them, each person that brings the living of the charism within the same mission. And when one sees it in the light of the Holy Spirit, well then one sees it with hope, with force, with fire, that only God can transmit. Without God, this is impossible. But with God, it's not only possible, but it is a guarantee because we are confident in His grace.
The co-responsibility of the charism needs to be understood from the same naturality of the movement. The movement is a spiritual reality formed by people who are called by God to live the same vocation and the same mission. This great reality of people who are called has a charism, and they feel called with this common mission and common vocation with a charism from which they are nourished. And this is the ultimate reason for the church, when it approves the charisms, because it's the church that approves charisms, it gives it to its members. And it says, this is good, yes, it's holy, it's good for you, it's good for the church. And it gives it to its members. And it says, now you're responsible for this charism. Charisms generate co-responsibility. And the church, in a document called Mutuas Relaciones, speaks of 4 verbs that show co-responsibility of a charism. First, it's to live the charism. First, to be co-responsible, you need to live the charism. You need to incarnate it. The second is you need to safeguard the charism because it's not yours. The church gives it to the members, and now you have to take care of it. It's a precious gift. The third is to have a deeper understanding of the charism in the light of the magisterium and sacred scripture. The charism is dynamic. It comes from God, and it's a mystery that God gives, but we can always have a deeper understanding of it. And the fourth is development. You need to develop it being creative and faithful. We need to be creative because this is God. We can encounter the new challenges of the times with the charism. So these are the 4 verbs that make us co-responsible for the charism.
I think one thing is the responsibility that we all have in being custodians of the charism. And another thing is the responsibility we have in the organization of Regnum Christi. The first thing I think we have to do is distinguish between the two, because it's evident that a general director has a major responsibility or an administrator who controls the assets, whereas the responsibility of the charism, on the other hand, is a question of living out the gift that God gives us. And living out this gift, well, can be being a receptionist in this house, or going out on a fundraising trip, or it can be organizing a very big apostolic work. But the important thing is that each of the members, of whatever branch it may be, understands from prayer this gift of God, that they live it, that they transmit it, and in that sense, any member of any of the branches has the same responsibility.
For me, co-responsibility is that together we safeguard the charism. Together we're responsible. And what I safeguard, well, you also complement me in safeguarding it. What I can't safeguard, the other knows how to safeguard better than me. And for this, one of the points of encounter in this theme of co-responsibility of the charism is our human limitations. Father Gerlanda made a beautiful reflection in one of his homilies in which he said that when we see a weakness in the other, the temptation is to think there isn't anything I can do. And yet the invitation from God is to ask ourselves, what can I do in order to help the other? And what can the other do in order to help me when they see weakness in me? And I think this is a point of encounter that gives me a lot of peace in this theme, because this is what co-responsibility is. And we can say, as St. Paul says, we have to put our gifts at the service of others as good administrators. I believe this is on a spiritual level as well as day-to-day life. It's a point of encounter in co-responsibility of the charism.
creo yo en que el carisma no lo
I don't think the charism belongs only to one person. There isn't somebody that can say, I'm the owner of the charism. I'm the only one that can define what's charismatic or what God wants for it. On the contrary, God, in calling us to the movement, gives the charism to all of us. Of course, he had an instrument in the foundation. But everybody that forms part of Regnum Christi, in some way, is an owner of the charism. I am responsible to bring to the charism what God wants to transmit through me. And I'm responsible in taking care of that charism. So there's no one in the movement that can say, this part doesn't concern me, this charismatic part, let the fathers see that, or the consecrated women, or the consecrated men, or this part, the lay people. We all have something to bring to it. And the charism isn't something static in time. It grows, it matures, it develops. It is adapted to places and times. And so everybody has a clear responsibility. We are co-responsible in taking care of the charism and developing the charism. The Legion was the first historical expression of the charism. But then after, God has made the other vocations flourish. And I think, so to say, this has made a garden, a beautiful garden, in which we've been experiencing the complementarity, the beauty of walking together as brothers, as sisters, each one bringing something specific, each one bringing a richness. And I think this also forms part of the gift that God has given us. The lay people more in the world, the lay consecrated men, the consecrated women, the legionaries as religious, but at the end, all of us are desiring and seeking the same thing.
Lo mismo. Eso yo creo que es más, yo creo que es más algo así, y que poco a poco el agua empieza a correr y a desbordarse.
I think that during many years, all the members of Regnum Christi, of all the vocations, we've lived as part of Regnum Christi without reflecting in which way we were living. And what's happened in these last years is that we've had to reflect about what we were. And I believe that during this reflection, it's been for us a motivation of joy to be able to see that each one, in the reflections as branches, we've come to the same conclusion. And it's been especially important, I think, for us consecrated women. In 2014, at the end of the general chapter, the Legion of Christ stated with clarity, they said, we are Regnum Christi. We don't see ourselves without Regnum Christi. And personally, that's how I lived it. And as consecrated women, I think we've always understood it that way. But now we're realizing it. And we're joyful because we've come to this point of encounter through the different assemblies and the general chapter.
Órganos de gobierno o reflexiones de cada rama.
I think in these last couple of years, the Legion has been verbalizing and conceptualizing in an explicit way something that they've always lived, which is that they're part of Regnum Christi, that Regnum Christi is part of them. In 2014, it was a great joy for me to see them express so clearly in the communique that we are part of Regnum Christi, and we don't understand ourselves outside of Regnum Christi. And after these 4 years of working together in the different territories and the local governances, in the works themselves, seeing things a little bit differently, working on the drafts, on the statutes, and everything else, all this to say that in April, again, the general chapter of the Legionaries, with some different chapter fathers than those of 2014, would say the same thing again. Yes, we form part of Regnum Christi. Well, this is a cause of great joy for all of us, for the whole movement, because the Legion, without a doubt, is a very big part of Regnum Christi. And we all want to be together. And so, obviously, there are things we still have to work on, things we still have to go deeper into, that the Legion itself has to go deeper into, especially in this idea of being Regnum Christi. But I think we're on the right path.
No correcto.
I do think density without too much. That's very density and very easy. Almost that sense.
So the Legionaries in themselves are a wonderful unity, a body of people who have in themselves a strong and vibrant community. Now they are an inseparable part of the Regnum Christi, thanks to the statutes which are being now finalized. And so yes, they're now part of the Regnum Christi legally. But the question is, it needs to be lived. So it's not enough that they are part of it legally, but they need to know how to live it so that it becomes one body in reality, in Christ. And that's an adventure. It's something that I personally am looking forward to. I see it's already happening, but it's going to develop with a lot of surprises, beautiful surprises, and that's our future.
Es un punto que ayuda mucho para el encuentro.
I think this point really helps a lot with the encounter with each other, in that this vocation, which is a strange vocation, it's not very well known, not only in the case of Regnum Christi, but generally within the Church. The vocation to a lay consecrated life, especially in men, is a little difficult to understand. And up to now, outside of those who have received the call, because those of us who have received it have it very clear that this is a call within Regnum Christi. We have it very clear and it's certain. But for those who haven't received it, and I understand, above all in the light of the history with which we have lived, can even be doubtful. Does this vocation really exist? What's going to happen with this vocation? So I think that the fact that the Church has given us this recognition as a society of apostolic life, of pontifical right, really helps us to understand that this is a reassurance, that this vocation is real, that it is true. And as such, I think this is very important. It's not something that affects only the branch in question, that is, the consecrated men. This is property of Regnum Christi. It is a vocation within Regnum Christi. And this should begin a discussion in Regnum Christi. What should we do with this vocation? It's not only a responsibility of the consecrated men. I, as a member of Regnum Christi, have received this gift from the Church, this recognition, this birth of the Society of Apostolic Life. What do I do with it? It is everybody's responsibility. How do I promote it? How do I integrate it in the life of Regnum Christi? How does it form part of our lives? Not only in as much as representing the consecrated men in a certain country, but rather the charism of Regnum Christi without this vocation is not complete. How can I integrate this to the life of Regnum Christi? On the other hand, I also think that the fact that this canonical clarity now exists really helps us, the consecrated men and consecrated women. The Legionaries have had this for some time now, and now even more so as a federation of Regnum Christi, really helps us to deepen in the understanding of our proper identities. And maybe before this was a bit more vague, but this process has really helped us find the specific things, that everything can't be reduced to works. What are the works of this branch or this branch in Regnum Christi? But rather, is a charismatic contribution of everybody. We've had to ask ourselves a lot of questions. But I think we also have to ask each other questions so that we can value each other more. And in the measure with which we value each other and understand what each one really brings to the table, well, then we can really interweave a true living of the charism and bring a rich apostolic contribution.
I believe yes. I believe even though there's autonomy for the communion, we can add together the points, the vocations of each one of the branches with the lay members and the autonomy of the branches, and it brings us this specificness of their vocation, which is very, very particular and special for Regnum Christi. And when they're there, when we're all together, that's when we have communion. We're here. We're here all together.
I think the point of encounter, I find it in the plan of God. Why do I say this? Because looking at the history, especially since I've been more involved, well, there was a difficult moment, I would say even hard. I think it was in 2012 when the delegate gave autonomy to the branches. And I think in that moment, we didn't really understand it completely. We needed time to assimilate it and to really see what God wanted. And personally, the Mass we had with Monsignor Carvalho really moved me. Why? Because it was like a crystallization of something that Cardinal Velasquez de Paulis had told us and had been taking us towards at the hand of the Church, up to coming to that point where this was crystallized in having these two branches of societies of apostolic life, letting them be autonomous in their internal life. There are moments in which, for example, when I was in the United States or further ahead as a territorial director, when I would say they should have an autonomy, there are many things that they have to decide by themselves. So in a moment like that, well, one can really only understand it from the point of God. There are moments in which, for example, when I was in the United States or later on as a territorial director, when I would say they should really have autonomy, there are many things which they have to decide by themselves. And so in a moment like that, well, really one can only understand it from the point of view that God has. God has a plan, and we've been walking in that plan. And of course, like in every path, there's been valleys that have been calm, but then you have to climb the mountain. You can't see the summit, but then you get to the summit and you understand a little bit more, but then you realize that there's another summit and you have to keep walking. And so I think we have to see these things from this point of view. Do we have everything clear now? Well, no. Why? Because we have to keep walking. And now, although each one has this autonomy in the respective branches, we have to see, being diverse, how to harmonize this unity that God wants, this unity which we have been working towards. This unity, I think, is what will reflect, maybe in an imperfect way, what the statutes tell us and what we have been working on these past days. So I think God has a plan, although we don't see everything clearly in every moment of our lives. For example, tomorrow's readings speak about this veil that God helps take away so that we can see more clearly. I think really at the end, we have to see everything from God's plan.
The autonomy of the branches for us has been first a discovery, and then it's been a confirmation that the Church doesn't make mistakes, that it's like a mom that leads us by the hand. In the beginning, we didn't consider this. For us, it was the most normal thing, our personal situation as a branch, and we never thought that we would come to an external autonomy. After this opportunity, when the cardinals said it was necessary to be autonomous, it was an opportunity for us to see the way, looking at our identity, to understand, to value autonomy, and it was a way that allowed us to go deeper into the truths, to know and to recognize who we are. We took for granted who we were, but we saw the richness and the greatness that was behind the consecrated branch with autonomy and all that autonomy brings with it. So what have we learned? Among many things, when a human person has clear his identity and has been able to assimilate it and internalize it, they're able to give themselves greater and with a lot more freedom because they know who they are and they know what they can contribute. And this is what has happened with us. After making this reflection, this beautiful reflection, because we realized that the charism is within us. And we've been able to interiorize it and understand what is our identity, who we are, and what we can contribute to Regnum Christi. I think this is the greatest contribution to be able to have an autonomy of the branch. Another part is the richest, practically speaking, to be able to have a personal government. A government that we can completely identify with ourselves and that they can identify with whom they are directing. The Cardinal, I remember, asked us in the beginning, but how can an institute that's different from you direct you? And we said, well, that's because that's always how it's been. And now we see the greatness and the beauty and the truth that there is when you feel directed by a person that lives the same thing that you do, because they are part of what you are. There's a full identification. I believe that these are the elements right now that show the importance of the autonomy of the consecrated branch. It's made us adults. We have a consciousness of being, to desire a canonical erection that we have now, thanks be to God, to be able to look for it, because we've seen that an adult person needs to have autonomy in order to make decisions and to be able to live life in first person, not depending on others. And this is far from independence. Some people maybe have not understood well because we haven't explained well that it's an independence, but that's not an independence. Autonomy has been a better integration with the movement. This is what I can say now about autonomy of the consecrated branch.
De nuestra autonomía.
The fact that we now have this canonical configuration means that the consecrated women of Regnum Christi, along with their brothers, the lay consecrated men of Regnum Christi, we are an entity. So I feel that we have arrived to the table of dialogue with the Legionaries of Christ, as well our brothers. We've arrived as adults. Everyone sitting around this same table, we can speak as adult members of the same family.
The important thing for them is to be recognized as a branch, something that they in fact already were, with their own proper autonomy, and to eventually configure themselves to something that the church recognized and the world recognizes. And in this, to be able to federate themselves to Regnum Christi. And so there they saw that the society of apostolic life was in fact fitting for them, because it forms part of something that they were already living to a certain sense. Community life, coming together around a common mission, making up this body that is the consecrated women of Regnum Christi.
So in a path which we've all been following within the movement, the consecrated women received the news of the approval right when they're about to begin a Jubilee year celebrating the 50th anniversary of the foundation of the consecrated branch in Regnum Christi. The consecrated men, we started a bit later. And in some way, it's this growth and development of the movement. And it's a moment in which the church recognizes the reality of consecrated life. Not that it didn't exist before. It was already approved in a different type of way, and in a different time. The last time was in 2013, after the first assemblies, in which we elected our own governments, as well as the approval of the statutes by the Pontifical delegate. It was a reality which had a different type of recognition. And then there comes a point of maturity in our own personal processes, and as well as a whole, in which the Church gives this particular recognition. And, as I've said before, it's a different type of recognition. Well, for us this is very important because it permits us to take this next step within Regnum Christi of being able to configure ourselves as a federation. It's this path which, at this moment, we've seen the best path to take, to consolidate Regnum Christi as a federation of 3 consecrated branches. And to be able to do that, we had to take the step of making ourselves societies of apostolic life. So it's a gift from God. It's another step on this path in which God has placed us. And I think He wants something big from Regnum Christi for the good of the Church and of all people.
Y de muchas personas. Que siga desbordando. Bueno, para mí como legionario.
Well, for me as a legionary, it is a cause of great joy. Not only because in order to establish a federation under the Congregation for Institutes of Consecrated Life and Societies of Apostolic Life, it was necessary for the configuration of the juridical entities to establish legal dialogue with a religious congregation. This in itself allows for the establishment of a federation. In itself, it is already something very good. But the joy comes from the fact that the consecrated women, as well as the lay consecrated men, have come to the end of a journey that has had certain difficulties and which gives them juridical recognition. And this will be for them the start of a different level of flourishing, especially spiritually, apostolically, with regards to their identity. And obviously, this will help with the constitution of the federation. That this federation be strong and united in a common mission at the service of the Church. And as such, hopefully we can all serve all men, giving them the thing that we hold most dear, which is the desire that they know, love, and follow Jesus Christ in His desire to bring them to heaven.
Llevarnos al cielo a todos.
La intención que nosotros teníamos, creo.
The intention we all had, all the branches, was that they could participate on every level, and that they would be consulted and participate in the discussion, depending on the type of decision, within the Federation, within Regnum Christi.
Dentro del Regnum Christi.
Me parece que es un punto de encuentro maravilloso porque
I believe that it's a marvelous point of encounter because we have one charism that's lived by the different vocations, and to have the lay members in the organs of government is really a great help for the government, because definitively the movement Regnum Christi exists in order to evangelize and to take the kingdom of Christ to the society, and the lay members, they have a particular mission to take this to their temporal realities of every day. And to have the lay members there with the legionaries, with the consecrated women and the lay consecrated men, it's a great richness. And how valuable is their consultation and listening to them to know what they think, including in the voting. They didn't have a deliberative vote, but I personally various times changed my opinion after seeing how they voted, how the lay members voted. I'm convinced that Regnum Christi is a gift for everyone. And through the lay members, the Holy Spirit speaks to us. I think we've come to a satisfactory point in the participation of the lay members. Because really, when you see the texts, the lay members should be consulted in everything that concerns the mission of Regnum Christi. The only thing that should be reserved a little bit are things that concerned more directly with the branches, and it's understood that their participation with a deliberative vote in this type of an environment would be not so necessary, but I consider it very necessary. And I'm thankful for the time that the lay members have wanted to help in the organs of government to be able to help Regnum Christi realize our mission.
O sea, que la misión del Regnum Christi se pueda realizar de mejor manera.
France, my small reality of France, for many years now, we've been living that in a formal and informal way. We've seen many times that what the lay people bring is common sense, a lot of common sense. And they bring us back to reality. They help us land, so to say. We tend to have a very clerical view of things. We've come a long way. We've come from a point where we basically saw the Regnum Christi members as novices. And little by little, we began to realize that their life just doesn't function that way. And the more one lives with them and works with them, you realize that that's just not their reality. So what I've seen in these past couple of days is that without the lay people, we're missing a key ingredient in the cake.
I think this is something that we've already accomplished in the past couple of years, and it's very marvelous. I think it might be worth it to distinguish between what it means at the general and territorial levels with that of the local levels. At the general and territorial levels, now the lay people participate with a consultative vote, and I think that's what we wanted. That's something that we asked for. At no moment we were looking for a deliberative vote just for the sake of having a vote. Simply what we want is to be part of the family. That we as lay people can bring a different perspective of a father, of a mother, of a businessman. I think the complementarity of the branches is what is really enriching the movement today. The difference in the local level is that's where our day-to-day is, where we can really influence, we can really bring something. There we do have a deliberative vote. And I think that's something very good, because that's where we live. That's where we have the possibility to act, and even the difference in the local level, which is where we really have our day-to-day, where we can really influence, where we can really bring something. There we do have a deliberative vote. And I think this is also something very good, because this is where we live. That's where we really have the possibility to act, and even where we can be in charge of some of these apostolic work. So I think it's a very big advance, and I think this complementarity among the branches is what will continue to make.
Perfecto, fenomenal. Ahora dejen el desayuno.
Pues que efectivamente ha sido un punto de encuentro el tema de optar.
Effectively, it has been a point of encounter, the theme to choose a federation of coordination and of direction, because the coordination will have a direction. Because we had to combine values, the value of autonomy of the branches with the value of unity, in that we all share the same charism and we share the mission. It was necessary to coordinate all of these autonomies around the mission and the charism, as well as with the lay members, in a way that we have to win in autonomy and in unity this charism and this mission. And time will tell us how this coordination will be concretely manifested and how to be visualized in the branches. And what will be put in common. The statutes give us this form of giving us a series of finalities of the federation. And also it establishes the principles of these autonomies. So it's not a federation that has this heaviness of a work, but a federation in which the spirit of Regnum Christi, the charism of Regnum Christi, and the mission of all of Regnum Christi will be coordinated and will be directed from there. In this sense, it's something very rich. And I think it's going to be beautiful because there isn't unity that's not formed with strong personalities and strong autonomies. And autonomy is also formed also by giving in to the common good by the autonomy. There's an appropriate identity of each one and a common identity that we all share. And in sharing, we coordinate what we share. And we don't coordinate what we don't share. Because each branch has their own identity. The Holy Spirit has been great because we can think in different models. We can talk about words with different meanings, with distinct meanings, even though we were using the same expressions, but in the end, we've realized.
Realmente teníamos que conjugar, con lo cual creo que ha estado muy bonito.
It's important to have some type of direction because the consecrated branches are here to serve the lay members. And so I think it's important to think how we can serve them in the sections. And that's why I think we said that we need some type of direction. But it's a collegial direction. It's not a direction that pertains to a particular branch. It's a collegial direction. All of us working together for the common mission.
It's possible. It's possible to have a federation of coordination and direction, both things. I believe the coordination is to bring together the strengths for something common, but it needs to have direction in a lot of environments to be able to make decisions and to be able to say, it's this way.
Por aquí.
Well, basically, I think the federation is an instrument, a canonical instrument, that will allow for a coordination among the three consecrated branches of the Regnum Christi movement, the Legionaries, the consecrated women, and the lay consecrated men, along with the lay members, so that everything that we have in common, which is our spirituality and our mission, can be realized with a government that isn't so vertical like it used to be, but a collegial government instead. That is to say, where a legionary, a consecrated woman, and a consecrated man will participate, and two lay members, so that the decisions that affect and concern what we have in common, which is our spirituality and our mission, can be realized in a coordinated way, and in a way in which everyone can participate.
What does it consist, practically speaking? I think we have to see, because we have to be educated, I believe, in a collegial government. I think a point of arrival that we've come to after this time, and I think it's positive because it reflects in a clear way, the co-responsibility in the mission that we all have as members of Regnum Christi. I believe all of us have expressed it with a lot of strength and with a lot of conviction that there is one common charism that God has given us and that we received, and it's shared by all, but then each one contributes something specific to the charism. And in this way, a collegial government can help to reflect this fulfillment of the common mission. I think we have to learn a lot. And I can say that in Monterrey, we have a good experience of a shared government in which a mission that we all fulfill, each one has their functions, but in the end, we're all fulfilling the mission. We've been able to work with harmony, with a good debate many times, because there are some conflicts, but we've been able to arrive to solutions that have been able to help the people that are there in the field. I think this is a good platform for us to be able to educate us in a collegial government and to be able to serve better in the mission, in the localities, and then be able to fulfill the mission in our territory.
Ciertamente es una novedad.
Certainly it's something new. It's something new with which the general chapter in this first part of the assembly shocked us in April. Because in fact it was a proposal from the Legion. A proposal that I think expresses extremely well the spirit that we want to live within Regnum Christi. That is to say, Regnum Christi belongs to everyone, and so everyone is responsible for carrying out the same mission. That is something that has been repeated over and over again in the general chapter, in the assemblies, in the general assembly.
Eso es el punto de encuentro.
This is the point of encounter. And it's very simple. There are two words. Collegial government. What does the word government mean? Government has a very clear job. It has to coordinate the efforts of all of its members towards the common good. Any government should do this. For us, as a spiritual family and apostolic body, our common good is to sanctify ourselves and to go out into the world to evangelize. This is the common mission. So, a government should coordinate the efforts of everybody so this common good, these two ends, can be accomplished. That is what governing means. But how to govern? That's a different question. There are many different ways. In the Federation, we have chosen a collegial government. And this is precisely the point of encounter. Because collegial, you have the directors of each branch coming together in a college, each one equal, and each one looking for these ends and doing it together. And so it is a very good reflection of the co-responsibility in our charism, in the living of our charism in Regnum Christi. We're looking for the same thing together. And on top of this, it respects two other things, which create other points of encounter. First of all, the autonomy of each branch, because each branch is a being in itself. The church has recognized this. And so we have to respect this. You have the territorial directors of each branch coming together with the others, respecting the autonomy, the identity, and how each branch lives this same charism. Collegiality allows us to do this. And given that it is a collegial government, not a dictatorship, it gives space to the localities, the directors of the localities, the directors of the sections, the directors of the works themselves. It gives them space so that they can respond to the necessities of the church. It gives them the flexibility, yes, that space, to do the works that will most help the church. So this is the point of encounter.
Perfecto.
posible un punto de encuentro entre las cuatro ramas y creo que el gobierno colegial
I think that the four branches can agree, and I think that collegial government is, at least for now, the best way of coordinating the mission together. It's something we didn't have before. Before, everyone was more on their own, and now the government will be collegial. There will be difficulties and things to improve or watch out for, but it's also a big step that the lay members of Regnum Christi will be consulted within the collegial government. It's something that's happening more in the church, and Regnum Christi is going at the church's pace, and it's going to help us to coordinate the mission that we have, and this in itself is going to be an exercise of unity that is going to strengthen us.
Well, the first thing has been understanding the difference. When the lay members had to vote with respect to whether they themselves were associated, I remember I was there, and there was a certain expectation as to what they were going to vote. And it was a unanimous vote for no. At the same time, they manifested with great clarity the responsibility they felt they had at every level as Regnum Christi members. I, for my part, was very happy, and I assumed that they were as well, and that's why they voted no. Because we all understand that the center, the heart of the responsibility of the lay members is in that liberty that they've always had to act. Everything in regards to this movement, which was in fact born from them. And we, with much happiness, with much joy, have received this news of the consecrated women and consecrated men as societies of apostolic life. And so we have to organize ourselves under the law of the church, under canon law. And that is something very good, because this permits us to be Regnum Christi and to continue this mission, which in the end is what enthuses us and is what we're made for. And the lay people, in not associating themselves, they themselves being an association, it's not necessary that they be under this law. And so they associate themselves individually to this federation that we form from a juridical point of view. But in the heart of what we are, it's the same. Nothing has changed. And in fact, I see with a lot of happiness this fact that they're free to associate themselves to the federation without being under this law, this canon law of the church. I understand the difficulty and the desire we have that this full responsibility could be manifested in their vote as far as the general and territorial levels go. But I think we've come a long way already. We've fomented a culture where we listen to them more, and we realize that we really need them. And although today this can't be manifested in a vote, because the federation is among those who federate it, that is, the religious branch and the two consecrated branches of societies of apostolic life, I think in the spirit they're there, completely present as far as responsibility goes. It could be that tomorrow they could have that right to vote. But for me personally, I don't think we're missing anything, understanding this reality that we have now. And I think many of them as well feel this way. I don't think they feel that they're being left out, because they're not. I think the really important thing is that our heart and the culture we foments a culture that we live as a movement.
Right now, as things are, and the possibilities that we have, this is a point of encounter, a magnificent point of encounter. Above and beyond one thing or another, it's very important the attitude and the will that all of us have so that this can be a point of encounter, and that all of us take on what we have now in order to live it profoundly in the day-to-day, our charismatic identity.
We have to look for an order, for a structure so complex as ours is. And so we can't do this without a juridical form. And so from an emotional point of view, I would say this brings a certain amount of peace with the structure. Let's not look at the structure as an enemy or a limitation or a problem. And if we find this peace, I think from here we can enter into harmony. Maybe in 30 or 40 years we'll have a big event where we ask ourselves about the structure and whether this structure from 2019 is still applicable to 2050 or 2070. And so a structure, in that sense, is not like the Ten Commandments. It has to adapt itself to the development of the organization, which nourishes itself from the charism.
El punto carismático.
Tal vez nos hemos metido en algún aprieto.
Perhaps we've put ourselves in a tight situation because we wanted to find an identity between a juridical identity and a charismatic one. And I think we're never really going to find one. And I think we'll always live with this tension between a major reality and the juridical instrument that tries to express it concretely. I think this is something that's really good. I think this permits us a certain type of dynamic in our lives as a movement. I remember when this whole process began and in the crisis years, we would fight a lot over the topic of whether the church should give us a new juridical structure in accord with how special we were. And these years have been a good time of realism for us. And yes, we do have something special, and that's why the church approves us and continues to support us. But at the same time, we fit under a juridical structure that exists. And this juridical structure of the Federation, which we have found, allows us to work together, continue a reality that already existed, the Legionaries of Christ, and then the Consecrated Branches as societies of apostolic life, with an autonomy that is concrete. This also allows us to add the lay people and to develop the apostolic work of the movement. So in summary, I don't think that harmony comes from an insincere peace. Harmony, on the contrary, is this movement, this coming and going, this knowing how to get above the tensions.
First, I'd like to say something to the lay members about their mission and about their commitment. I'm convinced that if they truly look, and if we all look at Christ that's called them to a concrete vocation in the Christian life and in Regnum Christi, and from there we contemplate the church, the movement, and they look at their reality, their own reality, they're going to realize that they have a very important mission to shorten distances between what they live and this Christ that's calling them. And I think this is to be salt of the earth and light of the world, and I profoundly believe in their vocation. And I think if we look back with the Second Vatican Council talking about the importance of the lay people, I think we've been slow to understand to what horizon or until what point that they are truly called to occupy not only roles in the government, but the responsibility that they have to live and transmit the faith. And I believe this is happening, the same thing is happening in the movement. In the assembly, we were discussing this. I think we've given steps. I think we're all more conscious with concordance that there is a common mission. There's a vocation of everyone, one charism that all of us have that we live distinctively, but that the lay members are especially called to live this from their temporal realities. We're at their sides, we're with them, but they have a vocation as just as important as ours. So I think we're giving small steps. And what Father Gerlanda said gives light. The charism is a common charism. All of us have the charism, and therefore the responsibility is of everyone.
Well, I think that the participation of the lay branch in the Federation is clear, because in the sections where the life of the movement is developed, the life that the lay member of Regnum Christi is developed, is under the government entities of the Federation. So I think the role of the lay person in the Federation will continue maturing when they assume more and more their mission of transforming the temporal realities they live in. So we'll go maturing as a Federation, especially the lay branch, in understanding that it's up to them to start new apostolic works, to start websites that transform the places they live and move in. And it doesn't depend exclusively on the consecrated branches, whether it be the legionaries, the consecrated men, or the consecrated women, that we go to them and tell them what to do. No, I'm sorry. You as lay people have to go out and explode and be those apostles, obviously with the help of the rest of the branches of the Federation. So in that sense, we have to continue maturing within the Federation. We'll mature when we really develop our baptismal vocation of being apostles. That there continue to be this clarity of what the Federation and Regnum Christi mean, and how as a person become a Regnum Christi member when I associate myself in the Mass, which we used to call the incorporation of Regnum Christi. In that moment, I associate myself formally to the Federation. That is to say, I form part, juridically speaking, individually, this Federation. And then we have to continue maturing and going deeper into what my responsibility is within the Federation, not only in the apostolic realm, but in organization and in governance. And I think that's where we're heading.
I'd say I haven't met anyone here at the Assembly who does not agree that the lay members have a complete participation in Regnum Christi, that they are fully members who receive this charism and this mission from God the same way any legionary or consecrated does. However, there are limitations to how that's exercised in regard to canon law. So we just had a great discussion with Father Gerlanda, our pontifical assistant, who explained it in a way that was really clear for me. He said that the Church sees that there is an actual, in fact, reality of the Regnum Christi movement that involves these 4 ways of living one charism completely. A total self-giving in the charism that's simply defined by state of life, but with a complete giving of all, so an equality of all in that sense. So he called that de hecho, or a factual reality. But then he explained that there is not a juridical reality or a juridical structure that can express that completely. It doesn't exist at this point in the Church. So it's not that there's a different Regnum Christi between the Federation and the Regnum Christi that we all know and love, but there's a limitation in canon law that will only allow members of the consecrated branches to have a full legal participation in the canonical structures of the Regnum Christi Federation. While we have this beautiful reality that the Church sees, loves, encourages in one way, all the branches see, love, and encourage them together, we can't all participate juridically the same way. So we agree that the lay members exist, and we agree that the federation is actually a really good thing.
I think we have to focus on the present, and the present is amazing. We've seen the participation of the lay members in a government entity, and now we're looking at the statutes, where there will be participation of the lay members in direction of sections, of localities, of apostolic works, and even participation in government roles on the territorial and general levels. And so the present, what we've come to, is really good, and we've already experienced the benefits of this. How do we look at the future? Well, I would say we really have to focus in the present, and it's obvious that everything matures. We all mature, we all grow. And surely the lay branch in some way will develop and grow. But let's not, for example, be like the person who's at a table drinking water, and suddenly they bring him a glass of wine, and he says, "Hey, this wine is really good, but too bad it doesn't take away the fact that I'm thirsty." Well, no, wine doesn't take away thirst, but it's really good wine. So let's enjoy the wine. This is coming out. This is how this is developing. It's flowing.
In the statutes, in number 43.1, we find a point of encounter for the works of apostolate, starting from our reality today, in that because they're so different with a lot of implications, and as well different in each territory, we see that it's most convenient that the proposals come from each reality. That's to say, from each territory.
From the point of the view of the lay members, the worry we had was that an allocation of apostolic works to the branches in some form would break the mission of the movement, that the layperson would find themselves in front of a work that are in the branches and that no longer belong to everyone. And in the past couple of days, we've come to some understandings that seem to have been there always, but we just didn't know how to express them in the right way. And this understanding is expressed in the statute itself. And that is that independent of if a work belongs to a branch or various branches, they are in function of the mission. And the statute premeditates several elements of synergy and coordination put there by the branches and the lay members so that this continues to be like this. And so the worry that was there at the beginning has been disappearing because we've gone deeper into the statute and we've seen that none of the branches want to have this worry about what belongs to who as far as apostolic works go, but rather it's a theme of administration and simplicity and management. And so we've opted out for this. But this doesn't mean that the works aren't in function of the mission of the movement, and that the lay people continue to work in these apostolates and in others for the good of the mission of Regnum Christi.
Bien, pues tal vez ha sido el tema.
Well, I think this has been the longest theme, the theme we've spoken about the most, that has had us speaking about it up to the last day, and trying to find formulas to try to get to this point to where we can harmonize the work of the Federation with relation to the branches. And here is where we find concretely the force of unity, the force of that common mission. with the given autonomy of each branch. And I think that's what's really behind this. This is why we've been talking about it up to now. And I think we come out of here, we come out with a lot of peace, with a possibility of walking towards the future, based above all on two principles, on confidence and on respect. Confidence among ourselves, which has been renewed, and respect of each work, of each territory, of each branch. Because what's behind that is that. How do we achieve the greatest good for each work? How do we think of the greatest good for the autonomy of each branch? And as well as that mission, which we consider to be common, and we want to consider to be common always. Father Emilio Diaz-Torres was telling us in the homily that we're walking. And I was thinking about that, and it resonated with me precisely because of the psalm, which was that of the Good Shepherd. And I was thinking, yeah, we are in Christ's hands, and we're walking. And he takes us on paths, sometimes that we don't understand, paths that can seem different. And that's why sometimes we enter these paths with a little bit of fear. And I think now we have a long path ahead of us, but very beautiful. And I think each territory has to make this concrete. Each territory has to see this with these colleges that have been formed, the territorial directors of each branch, how to make this concrete for their works. And I think that's where we are, and we're walking with peace.
La obra apostólica.
The apostolic work of the Federation is very wide. And we've thought, and we've come to the conclusion, all of us, that the Federation will dedicate itself to be custodian of, to accompany, to go deeper into, and to promote the charism which we have received. Also to impulse this common mission that should be at the service of the Church, and to promote the collaboration among all of us of the apostolic activity, and to promote as well the communion among everyone who is working, legionaries, consecrated women, lay consecrated men, and so many lay members who are collaborating in the mission of the Federation, which is the Regnum Christi movement. The Federation, in its college, as the directive general college, looks for, in some way, to impulse the growth of these aspects of the charism, communion, the apostolic mission. We also see that it does it in a collegial manner, in unity. And in order to be able to attend to the apostolic works of education, they're going to do this together, the territorial directors. They're going to be there as a team, impulsing the life, the growth, that these apostolic activities accomplish their mission. Now, the point of encounter we can all make. The territorial directors and the general directors, as college, are here impulsing the charism. And the same way, the territorial directors in these educative centers are impulsing the charism, are looking for communion, are encouraging the apostolic action of everyone. And all of us look to serve the Church. And we also want to impulse vocational growth. We want more lay people to participate in the life of the movement of Regnum Christi on behalf of the Federation.
Servir a la Iglesia. Queremos también impulsar el crecimiento vocacional. Queremos que más laicos vayan participando de la vida del movimiento Regnum Christi a través de la Federación.
Como